You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live. Hello, welcome to a second Garibaldi Red of the week as we look forward to a massive game for both Everton and Nottingham Forest at the City Ground on Sunday. So we're going to preview that for the next 25 minutes or so. It's like to be joined first of all by Michael Temple. Temps, how are you doing?
Afternoon, Matt. I think I'm quite hopeful, actually. I've spoke to our resident Toffee fan here, Jake Ball, and he's far more nervous than I am. So we'll see how Connor's feeling.
Yes, well, you teed up our second guest there, the Liverpool Echo's Everton writer, Connor O'Neill. Connor, thanks for joining us. You well?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Very grateful to you. Come to you first, Connor. In fact, we'll do about 10 minutes with Connor and then we'll let him go and then we'll pick up the slack with Temps. Don't want to keep Connor too long because he's a busy man. How are you feeling about the game, Connor? Forest fans are absolutely terrified. I don't know how Everton fans are feeling. What's it gauging like up there?
I think they're more concerned, worried, and probably some a little bit terrified after Saturday's defeat to Aston Villa at Goodison. I think there was a bit of a feeling of if Everton could have beat Aston Villa, that would have been 3 home wins on the bounce under Sean Dyche since he come in. That probably would have enabled Everton to get a point at the City Ground on Sunday, and I think fans would have been quite content with kind of 7 points from the Leeds, Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest fixtures. I think because they got beat in the manner in which they got beat, I think it puts an extra emphasis on this being a huge game on Saturday for both clubs, because I think there's a feeling amongst Everton fans that if they can beat Nottingham Forest, it kind of drags Forest back into the dogfight a little bit more than what they are at the minute. And I think there's the opposite feeling is if Everton get beat, then that's a relegation rival they've lost to again. And you think of, since Christmas alone, they've lost to Wolves, Southampton, West Ham, and potentially could be Nottingham Forest. So they've thrown a lot of points away against relegation rivals. So I think there's the feeling's one of almost nervousness and probably a little bit of fear, because, like I say, I think if they would have beat Aston Villa, I think there'd be a bit more hope. And many fans would have just accepted the points and thought that's a good point on the road, because they were beaten on Saturday against Aston Villa and the results around them went against them the way they did. And obviously, they ended up back in the relegation zone. I think there's a bit of fear around the half of Merseyside as things stand.
I think there's a bit of a feeling like, I haven't seen much of Everton since Dyche went in, but it kind of feels like, he's done an amazing job. He's transformed the club and they've given him a much better chance of staying up now. Is that the case? Has much changed, or is it still a lot of nervousness about how it's panning out?
I think it's almost like there's 2 elements to that question, in the sense of the nervousness is around the lack of goals. Obviously, Everton rely heavily on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and it was criminal that they never brought in a forward during the January transfer window, because, like we've seen over the last 18 months, it's a lot to rely on Dominic Calvert-Lewin playing on a regular basis. Obviously, he's injured now, and no one kind of knows when he's going to return. The club and Dyche himself are extremely coy on when Everton can expect to see him back. So the nervousness comes in the lack of goals, because, like we've seen this season, Everton just can't score goals. I think they've scored 2 more than what I think they've scored 2 or more on 2 or 3 separate occasions. It is, which it's not many. Neil Maupay, not the clinical finish that Everton need in front of goal right now. So the nervousness comes from that. I think that the hope and the belief comes from that Dyche is just simply a better manager than Frank Lampard. I think Frank Lampard was a really nice bloke. He took to the club, he took to the fans, and they took to him. But ultimately, the way he was setting the team up, the way the results of the performances, the way they were going, he was, kind of hung out to dry a little bit and kind of was what often one found. And so I think the belief is that Sean Dyche is a better manager, and because of that, everyone have a better chance of staying up. And I think we saw that in flashes. The Arsenal game, Dyche's first one, Leeds United. And even on Saturday against Aston Villa, although Everton were beaten, it was one of the better performances this season, as strange as that sounds. They look a lot more organised, a lot more compact. It's clear they work on certain things in training. They put emphasis on basically what Everton are quite strong at in terms of getting the best out of that. So I think the belief and the hope coming from Dyche has been a better manager than Frank Lampard, and the fact he's been in this situation before with Burnley, and he's managed to keep Burnley up. But the nervousness and the fear is certainly around the lack of goals and the reliance on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because last season when they were down there and they were struggling, they have Richarlison to fall back on, who more often than not would either produce something out of nothing and create a goal or score a goal, and he kind of helped drag Everton over the line. Now they don't have a player like that. They only have Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Like I say, it remains to be seen when he will return. and with each passing week that he doesn't return, the nervousness and the fears grow a little bit deeper.
So who are the threats then? Because you mentioned Mopé. I mean, Forest tried to sign him. Anthony Gordon's gone. You've got Dwight McNeil. I guess there's Damari Gray always strikes me as a good player, but where are the goals going to come from?
Well, this is the million-dollar question, because obviously, it seems like Sean Dyche is going to stick with Neil Maupay despite not being prolific in front of goal. I think in the hope that, if he gets one, he might then end up getting a run of maybe 4 or 5 before now the end of the season. Dwight McNeil has a bit of a rebirth since Sean Dyche coming in. He initially was someone who struggled under Frank Lampard, and towards the end of Frank Lampard's tenure, found himself on the sidelines looking in. He struggled to get any sort of game time even off the bench. And Damari Gray's gone the opposite direction in the sense of he's found himself on the fringes since Sean Dyche come in, having been such a key player for Frank Lampard. Many Evertonians believe Damari Gray should be given a shot in the team now, because he is a player who can do something out of nothing. He's a little bit inconsistent, I think, as all kind of wingers genuinely are. He can sometimes produce something out of nothing, but then obviously, like, you can have frustration moments where things don't quite come off for him and nothing kind of works for him. But I think they are Everton's two biggest hopes now is Dwight McNeil and Damari Gray in somehow getting service to Neil Maupay, which he can't miss. But even on Saturday, Everton missed 2 glorious chances, which seems harder to miss. So I think that the big hope for goals is Damari Gray, Dwight McNeil and Neil Maupay. But from what Evertonians have seen so far this season and what they've seen under Sean Dyche, that looks a big ask, because quite simply they just don't have the firepower. I mean, apart from them 3 lads, you look at Ellis Sims, who enjoyed a successful loan spell to Sunderland at the start of the season, but has been found a little bit wanting when he's been given a taste of the Premier League so far. Against Liverpool at Anfield a few weeks ago, he was kind of found wanting a little bit. He looked like a bit overawed by the occasion, and there's a belief by many Everton fans, which is the correct one, really, that he shouldn't even be back in the squad. He should still be Sunderland learning and developing. The fact that he'd down to turn to him sums up the situation they find themselves in. So I think that the 3 players they're looking towards are Gray, McNeil and Maupay, but as to say, from what we've seen so far, that looks a big ask moving forward.
So do you think, is it too early to say it's win or bust for Everton? Is a point still a decent result for them? Obviously, a defeat's a bit of a disaster, but is it that stage of the season where they feel they have to win the game?
I don't think they'll feel like have to win the game. I think as a side, and Sean Dyche will feel he won't have to win the game, because there's a belief that there's enough games still left to go, and there's a number of home games to go, in which Everton could and should pick points up in. But I think for the fans' perspective and giving them hope and a bit of belief, if Everton were to get beat on Sunday, it'll be an absolute hammer blow, because it'll be they play Arsenal Wednesday night. But the belief is that the games against like Aston Villa and Forest are the ones that Everton need to pick points up in if they're going to stay up. So if they were to lose both of them games, that'll be a hammer blow. And I think for many people it won't be a case of it's bust, but there'll be a belief that it could be a long way back for Everton in terms of their bid to survive. But I think Sean Dyche feels that there's enough games to go, even if Everton were to get beat on Sunday, that they can pull themselves out of it and get a run of form and get safe. And speaking to people at the club, Sean Dyche has a belief that he's kept up a lot weaker squads than this one at Everton in the Premier League before. I think the problem is, I think some fans, although they kind of believed at the start, and now kind of maybe drifting away from that thought that they can't stay up. But I think Sunday's game will be pivotal in many people's thoughts of how good of a chance Everton have got of preserving their top flight status. Because, like I say, I think if they can get a point, it'll be seen as a good point on the road, and they can build it at home. But if they get beaten, the fact that it's back-to-back defeats in terms of teams who they believe they should be getting points off, it'll be seen as a hammer blow, and it almost then gives Forest that little bit of momentum as well to get a little bit above them and move away. And Everton right now need to suck as many teams into the fight as they possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, by the time people listen to this, Everton will have played Arsenal tonight as we record this, which could change the picture. I mean, it'd be a great result for them if they get anything. Just lastly, before we let you go, Connor, James Garner, a big favourite at Forest, 18 months on loan. I think, Forest would have liked to have signed him, but he didn't pan out. He ended up at Goodison Park. I mean, like I was saying before, you haven't seen much of him, but have you seen a player there when you have seen him on the pitch?
He come on against Man United and showed classes, signs of something special and something different. He starts to ball for in the League Cup and was probably the standout performer that night on a pretty dismal night for Frank Lampard and Everton as they were beaten 4-1. But he's probably the standout player. It's just been a simple case of injuries, I think, so far. You know, he's struggled to nail down any sort of regular game time. He's been in on the team. Obviously, the injury he picked up against Bournemouth in that League Cup tie has meant he's been sidelined until now. He's a feature for the club's under-21s, which there is a feeling that he could be close to a return and certainly getting back in the matchday fold. But the big thing for James Garner and Everton was how highly Frank Lampard talked about him. You know, he kind of was genuinely excited by the prospect and develop James Garner. And I think there was a feeling amongst Everton that they'd almost managed a bit of a coup by bringing James Garner in the summer for £15 million he paid in the end. But they seemed to believe it was a bit of a coup that, you know, a young up and coming talent, someone who's been at Man United for a long time, someone who's done well in the Championship at Forest, that they've managed to get themselves someone who they see, you know, is the future and could play for Everton for a number of years to come. So the excitement around James Garner from people from within the club probably hasn't been matched by what we've seen so far. But I think that's what Everton fans are almost hanging on to in terms of James Garner, is what the way Frank Lampard spoke about him, the way James Tarkowski spoke about him, Paul Clement, one of Frank Lampard's coaches, spoke really highly of him. And like I say, I'm speaking to people at the club, there was a feeling that was a massive kind of transfer coup for the Blues when he got him in the summer. So I think Everton fans are holding on to that in the sense of what to expect from him. But I think from what we've seen so far, it's been very little, and you know, you almost feel like he's become a little bit of a forgotten man in recent months because he's been out for so long. And you know, you'll hope to maybe play his way into Sean Dyche's thinking sooner rather than later, because Warrior Everton have got a lot of players in his midfield. I think there's 5 ahead of him at the minute, 6 if you include another youngster as a Price. So there's competition for places there. So James Garner will probably have to do a lot to get in Sean Dyche's thinking. But as I say, from what's been said about him in the build up to, you know, him being in a position he is now, it's one of excitement and one of kind of potential. But we're yet to see that potential come to any sort of fruition.
Connor, thank you very much. We'll let you go. Appreciate your insight. Wish Everton well for the rest of the season, apart from Saturday. In fact, I don't know if I do wish them well. If they go down and it takes a couple of one of the slots, then that's fine by me, actually. But wish you well for the rest of the season.
Cheers, lads. Thanks so much for having me on.
Cheers. Thanks very much. You too. Bye. Right, Temps. From what you've heard there, does it change your feelings at all? I mean, you know, Everton are a club still in crisis in a lot of ways, aren't they, when it comes to goal scoring and things like that?
Yeah, that's the big takeaway from me. You can hear the concern there as Connor talks through the options. They've got no great faith in any of the lads that are charged with scoring goals for them. Having watched Neil Maupay, I think we dodged a bullet there. There was strong rumour that we were one of the clubs in for him. He's been going to pieces. He just doesn't seem to have that poise around the goal that he had when they and us were scouting him. So hope he plays, not too concerned there. Top scorer is Damari Gray, who scored 3 in 10, but 5 in 50 before that. He has a lot of pace. I think we're all still scarred by the goal he scored against Forest in that 1-1, when we'd worked so hard to get ourselves into a winning position, and then long ball over the centre halves, and in he slips to finish well for 1-1. So that result still haunts me a little bit, and I think several Forest fans will feel the same. We owe them one for that, and I just hope that, well, I know that Steve Cooper will be preparing us in a positive frame of mind. This isn't a game that we're going to hoping to avoid defeat. We've got to go for the juggler here. Beat these guys, deny them 3 points, get 3 points for ourselves. And I'll say this again, as I said about the Leeds game, if we do that, I can't see Everton catching us.
I suppose the Sean Dyche factor it's a weird one, isn't it? Because he's watched Forest almost as much as any of us, almost as much as Steve Cooper. There's no other manager in the Premier League who knows as much about Forest. He was in the director's box so much while he was out of work. To what degree does that worry you? Yeah,
Dyche gets more hospitality than me, doesn't he? Before you get that one in. But yeah, seeing him and Woney and Stoney at his side as well. I respect him as a manager. I think he's very effective. It's not necessarily pretty football, but it's unfair to say that Sean Dyche is a hoof-it merchant, because he's not. There's a method to what he does. There's a a means of getting his point across the players and plugging in the right personnel. And the challenge he's got now is he hasn't had the opportunity to assemble a typical Sean Dyche squad. So he finds it, I think his immediate mission is to get a tune out of players that have been underperforming. And all the names that Connor mentioned there, if they were being honest and looking at themselves, would consider themselves to be Premier League, mid-table Premier League players who aren't hitting those levels at this moment in time. So as we saw with the Arsenal game, Everton are capable of causing an upset, getting points on the day. Sean Dyche is a far better football manager than Frank Lampard. He's going to make them more resilient and stronger than they would have been if they hadn't have made that change. And yeah, he's watched a shed load of Forest this year. But I think we're a pretty hard team to scout, because you're never quite sure if we're going to turn up and play like we did against Man City or turn up and play like we did against West Ham. And our home form has been so markedly different from how we've been on the road. So Forest are narrow favourites with the bookies for a reason, and this would be a massive game to win. And I hope Dyche doesn't undermine our plan.
Have you done an 11? We can pick up some names from it.
Yeah, I don't see changes. I think if you look at the available midfielders, he used Lingard, Mangala and Danilo are there as well. He seems to fancy Andre Ayew ahead of Sam Surridge, but I don't see how anybody forces their way into the 11. So fitness issues aside, because I know Lodi's seen as a slight doubt, you've got to expect Navas behind Williams, Worrell, Felipe, Lodi, Colback, Freuler, Shelvey, Gibbs, White, Wood and Johnson.
So I was going through it from back to front and picking a few out there. I suppose Williams and Worrell had a tricky time at West Ham in the last 20 minutes. Williams, he's learning the game still, and it's difficult. You know, if you're Brennan Johnson learning the game and you make mistakes and play poorly and Forest don't score a goal, it's a bit different to if you make a gaffe at right back and you end up conceding 2 goals down your side, or maybe even 3, I think it was, at the London Stadium. So there's an emphasis on Nico Williams to put in, I said on Monday, a 90-minute performance, not a 70-minute performance. Are you worried about him? And Joe needs to show that Man City performance again, doesn't he?
I like Nico on the ball and going forward. And Darren made this point a few weeks ago. He was signed as a right wing back when we thought we were going to play 3 at the back. And he now finds himself having to play as an orthodox right back, which isn't perfect for him. And the way I would coach him is to say, you've got to defend first. Of course, we want that energy and those overlaps when they're on. We need to feed Brennan Johnson. But your job, first and foremost, is to be part of a back four that don't concede. And I think that means changing his blend a little bit, asking him to take less attacking responsibility and to hold his position a bit more, work out if they are going to try and bomb Wazza with balls in behind, get that double cover there. Because Williams isn't a slouch. And if his starting position is fine, then we shouldn't fear the ball in behind. However, if he goes wandering, in the same way that Bernardo Silva did, by the way, when we scored, then that's where structure can fall apart, and any team in the Premier League can pick you off. So, I've got a slight concern there, but I think that it can be overcome by the brief that Steve Cooper gives to Nico Williams. He's just got to take it on board and defend first. Of course, you want to see that ball carrying. Of course, you want to see his passing ability. But I think more than anything else, we want him to be part of a back four that keeps a clean sheet.
Yeah, I think we're going to see that ball. Was it Spurs who tried it, or someone Leeds who tried it between right back and centre back? And Mopé's quite nippy. We know like we said, he struggles to finish, but his movement's good and he's quite an agitator. And I think we'll see Everton play that ball in behind Worrell, who's not the quickest, as we know.
But Aurier mopped that up, didn't he? In that game, they had Nonto was wide left. He was chalk on his boots all game. And they constantly look for that ball. Aurier's so good in the air for a fella of 5'8", 5'9". It was easily dealt with, and we were almost happy to tempt it. But yeah, if you were them looking a way to get at us, that would be a potential means. And I just hope that the brief is given and received, because we can frustrate Everton. They're still bereft of confidence. They're still feeling bad for themselves because of the position they find themselves in. We've got points on the board, therefore we're in the driving seat, and we could kill their mood with a result on Sunday.
Yeah, there was another team who tried it as well. It might have been Chelsea, even. I'm not sure. In midfield, I think we agreed on Shelvey and Freuler. Would you be tempted, or do you think Cooper would be tempted to change Colback for a Mangala or possibly a Danilo who can move the ball and retain the ball a bit more? Because that's been a failing, I think.
Yeah, I would. So that's the team I think Cooper's going to pick, because Colback's done a little wrong. Mangala for me gives you a bit more in transition, passes the ball forward. Maybe he's thinking with Shelvey able to do that from deep, because Shelvey's a very deep lying playmaker, isn't he? As I mentioned, the Ben Watson comparison before, goes to collect the ball, from a 10-yard pass from the back four, has a couple of touches, looks to ping it or change the point of attack. He's not making these surging runs or threading balls from the number 10 spot. So I think against Everton, you can afford to take more of a risk, take a bit of structure out of there in Colback, add a bit more dynamism in. Mangala for me would get the shout narrowly over Danilo in this one. So yeah, I think that's the hardest part of the team to call, and I wouldn't be disappointed or surprised to see Mangala start on Sunday. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose Ryan Yates is a possible factor, but I don't think you throw him in even if he's deemed fit. I think that's too much to ask.
Start.
No, I think it'd be nice to have him on the bench and even not used off the bench, just be there, maybe 5 minutes to see out some headers or something, and then look to him in the coming weeks. I would like Mangala of the three. I think I've said this before. My slight gripe with Mangala is I think he just gives the ball away cheaply when he's done something great. And if he eradicates that from his game, I think he's going to be a top player. I think we'll see that next season once he's settled. I love Jack Colback, but him and Freuler, maybe they're a bit too similar. I'm not sure how it would pan out, but I think Forest need more dynamism in midfield. So I'd probably like to see Mangala, and then Danilo feels like this kind of project that's more next season, even though we've seen bright signs from him. He's a real talent, obviously, but even against Man City, it passed him by a little bit, I felt.
Well, Freuler didn't have his best game at the weekend, but I think we all see that he's untouchable is the wrong word, but he's highly regarded in Cooper's thinking, and he's forgiven for these 6 out of 10 games because he is so structured, gets everywhere, but seems to hold his ground, knows when to commit a foul, knows how to marshal the troops. So, I still want to see more from him. I know, Twitter might cane me a bit for not seeing the genius of Freuler. I know he's a good player, and I do appreciate what he does. I just think he could do that a little bit more, particularly against teams where we're on the front foot, can take more risk, can have more of the ball, can build in a more structured sense, and don't have to rely on sitting deep and counter-attacking with 30% possession, because there's no reason why we shouldn't see far more of the ball in this game. I was just looking at the possession stat in the game where Everton beat Arsenal. They had 29% of the ball in that game, and snuck out 1-0 with that goal from the cross that we've all seen. So yeah, that midfield blend's important, and Colback might be at risk.
I mean, Forest had 51% possession at West Ham. My gripe was what they did with it. They lost it in bad areas. Then they passed it around at the back. And I said my piece on Freuler on Monday, kind of like you. I think he's a good, solid signing, but you want to see a bit more from him, especially in games like this at home. I always talk about winning the battle in midfield, and I don't mean like getting yellow cards, but like against Chelsea, where they just got in Mount and Zacharia's face and made it really hard for Chelsea. I think it's going to be that kind of game. Looking up front, I mean, Chris Wood is kind of the interesting factor, because since he's come into the team, I think Morgan Gibbs-White's been less effective. I don't think we've been able to get Morgan on the kind of the half turn, on the counter attack in quick transitions. I'm not sure if that's Chris Wood's fault, but do you play Chris Wood and shift Morgan a bit out to the left? I'd quite like to see Jesse Lingard play in this, because Everton are kind of they've got Tarkowski and Cody, who aren't the most mobile. Seamus Coleman's 34 and not the most mobile on that flank. Maybe it's a Lingard game. What do you think about the attack?
I think Chris Wood plays on Sunday, but I'm still not sold. So we like what we saw against Man City in a very short cameo when he found his position at the back stick and finished off a very good move. He let his intent be known when he came in and won that first header whilst flooring his man. Outside of that spell, we have seen nothing like the best of Chris Wood. He hasn't shown that he's acclimatized to our system, and we haven't shown that we've adapted our system to get the best out of him. Ally that to an opposing manager who knows Chris Wood and his game inside out, and I think they'll just put their best ball winner on him, make sure that he's under pressure from every set piece and goal kick, and try and nullify his threat. I think that he deserves ongoing backing because we know what he can become. But there's only so many times that we can put him in this side and expect impact, assists, and goals without changing the way that we play. And the last thing I want to do, to your point, is impact on Morgan Gibbs-White, who's going to be the heartbeat of this team for a long time to come. I don't see Lingard starting. He got minutes from the bench at the weekend, didn't he? So he might be one of the first changes. I'm unconvinced that Ayew is the answer. I'd personally like to see Surridge get more minutes ahead of him. But I do think Wood will start because there's clearly a goal scorer in there, and if he can add to that the physicality, the kind of bruising intent that we saw when he was at Everton, when he's trying to disrupt centre halves, I think he can be a bit of a weapon. But yeah, I still haven't seen anything outside of that Man City goal that's convinced me that he's worth 15 million quid. I'd love to be proved wrong.
The other thing is with like you say, they're going to put their best marker on him, and that's going to be Tarkowski, who's going to know Chris Wood's game inside out from Burnley. And if you're Tarkowski, would you want to have that battle with Wood, or would you be more troubled by a Scarpa who you've no idea what he's going to bring, Lingard who's mobile, Ayew? I don't know about Ayew yet. I'm not seeing enough of him. I thought he was bright against Man City, and then we haven't seen too much from him, but Cooper obviously knows him well. And I still would like to see Sam Surridge play more, and I think he could ruffle a few feathers playing at the left of that three. I mean, go on. I would not start Wood. I'm feeling it's more of a case not to start Wood the more we're talking about it.
But what's the percentage option? So all these theories we've all got of who brings what and what might work and what might not. The percentage option is still starting Chris Wood. For everything I've said about us not yet seeing the real Chris Wood, this might be the start at the weekend. He could just as easily score 2 goals as none. We could just as easily start pumping crosses in from a bit deeper, getting third man runners off Chris Wood from the goal kicks. He might just find that, rediscover that dominance, and he knows Tarkowski's game as much as Tarkowski knows his. So it's all theoretical, and it's pub chat, isn't it? But I think the percentage decision, the high percentage decision, is to start Chris Wood.
I asked Connor, is it win or bust or don't lose? What do you think it is for Forest?
It's definitely don't lose, but no, we've got to go in positively. I'm not going to repeat what I said before the Southampton game about our mindset, but that's how I feel. We've got to have some confidence. Arrogance is the wrong word, but there's got to be a level of expectation at home against a team that's beneath us, that we're favourites for a reason, that the form is deserved, that our league position is deserved, that we should be beating Everton. And there's not too many sets of supporters you speak to that, defeatist might be the right word. They've got a million reasons why they feel their team isn't winning at the minute, and the main one being that lack of any kind of potent attacking threat that they can agree on and get behind. So I think there are more goals in us at home than there are in Everton away. I think that the central midfield three, whoever they are, can cope with Everton's midfield. You've mentioned one or two players there who are at the wrong end of their career and potentially don't want to be facing up against Brennan Johnson and Morgan Gibbs-White for the pace and skill that they bring. So the right result for me is a Forest win. I don't think we lose too much with a draw. Defeat could be really damaging, both psychologically and for what it does to our relative league positions.
Defeat would mean to me that you're going to have to get at least one away win, maybe two, or you're going to have to beat Arsenal or Man U or Newcastle at home. It transfers the pressure and it certainly cranks it up. But then you look at the teams below Forest. I mean, you'd much rather be in Forest position than, obviously any team below them, but especially like I was looking at the fixtures this morning. We were in WhatsApp and I was very generous with my predictions, and still Bournemouth, Southampton, Everton and Leeds and get anywhere near 40 points. And Forest only need 15 more points. And only is it's a very big if they can get, 4 more wins or 3 more wins and some draws. But I think Forest are still in a good position and I'm not panicked yet. And if they do lose the game, it just kind of, we've been out the bottom three for long enough that we felt comfortable, and it cranks up the kind of the fear that all the fans have of going back down after one season. But
hang on a minute here. You're doing your own research down. You've predicted the outcome of every Premier League game between now and the end of the season. So go on, Rain Man. Tell us how it all finishes.
Not quite, because it was the back of the fag packet stuff. But I think I had Southampton on 32 points with a decent run in, Everton on 34 with a decent run in. I had Bournemouth on 38 with a
which is ridiculous, by the way. Bournemouth do not get anywhere near 38 points.
No, I agree. I was really generous with them. I think I had Leeds on 36, and that was with them taking, what would that be, 14 more points. I didn't do Wolves because I think Wolves will be all right, but I think Forest is still in a good position. Obviously, the away form is alarming, and it's very frustrating when they perform like they did in the last 20 minutes. But like I said on Monday, they don't need to win 7 or 8 more games. They don't need to win 3 away games. They need to win 4 more games. And I don't think it's time for panic yet. If we're sat here on Monday, as we will be, you'll be with us and hopefully Gary as well. If Forest lose the game, then it's going to be a tense conversation and we're going to be a bit twitchy. But let's see how it goes, certainly.
Yeah, I don't see us losing the game. I think there's too much on it. And how many times this season have we rose to the occasion at home and found the opposition off colour because of the intensity of the atmosphere, the steadfast support behind the team, even in the event of early setbacks, and then ultimately events on the pitch, which have just been a joy to see over the last few months. So, I think we win this game, and if we don't, you'll remind me of this moment when we're sitting with Gary Birtles on Monday. But Everton are in a far worse position than we are. They're not used to being here. They don't expect to be here. They're about to build potentially the best stadium in the Championship. We are punching above our weight. Yes, we've had a setback against West Ham, but that's all it is. It's one away game written off ahead of a home game against one of our relegation rivals. If we win this game, they're not catching us. There's that much on the line. I think the boys are going to be up for it, and we can see them off. It may be a 1-0. We can see them off.
It's going to be a 1-0. It's not, unless apart from that Leicester game, it's always a 1-0. But hopefully you're right. I do feel confident, and this might come back to bite us on the arse. But if Forest draw, then that's not a bad result. And if they lose, then you kind of, you have to front up to the challenge, don't you? And it does crank the pressure up. But this is where their mettle is going to be tested if they do lose. That's a conversation for another day, and that other day is Monday. So, Temps, thank you very much.
Cheers, Matt. Was I like a walking LinkedIn post today?
Was I like a vicar? Yeah.
You're always like a village vicar, mate.
What's that mean? What's a village vicar?
I think he means you just like that, that kind of friendly everyman that you can confess all your sins to. So if you find people
I don't want to hear people's
confessions. Find people knocking on your door asking for advice, you're just gonna have to learn some psalms, I think, and be able to point them to particular corners of the Old Testament. But I think it was I really enjoyed reading that. I think it was a really, really good bit of penmanship from one of your listeners.
Yes. I've not been in church since I was in school, so I'd have to very much brush up. Yeah, that's in reference to a 5-star iTunes review, which is very much appreciated. So please send us some more of those songs. They've got 5 stars in them, and I'll check if we've had any more actually. But
feel free to rip us apart brutally in direct personal attacks as well. We quite enjoy that.
Don't start. People will certainly take up that mantle. Yes. Yeah. If you liked it, do subscribe on YouTube. Give us good reviews. Spread the word, etc., etc. And in the meantime, we shall see you on Monday.